The Vietnam War, beginning in 1955 and ending in 1975, took the lives of 58,000 Americans. Back at home, the war divided the nation, pitting friends, families, and neighbors against one another as they struggled to understand what was going on overseas. The protest movement during this time was huge. Also, for the first time in U.S. history, the majority of the Vietnam War was televised, and the violence of this conflict was exposed for what it really was.
We are going to win.
No, we are putting in a major effort in Vietnam. As you know, we have about 10 or 11.
Because we are the greatest peacekeeping nation in the world today because of our power.
Good job. I saw you splatter one right in the back with a rocket.
Roger got lucky again.
John Welsh Dyke served with the naval forces from 1966 to 1970 and was stationed in Vietnam for 6 months. The Navy in Vietnam had a pivotal role in controlling the coastline. Through destroyers, cruisers, and battleships, the Navy contributed to the war effort. In 1966, when he was just 21 years old, John enlisted in the Navy.
I would have been drafted, so I enlisted.
Oh.
And they had, back then you could avoid being drafted by staying in college, and so I stayed in college, and once I graduated from college, if you would be able to become an officer if you joined up with a college degree, possibly anyway. So I did that. I didn't have basic training. I went from college to officer candidate school in Newport, Rhode Island. And they had a training, officer candidate school was just kind of just a very regimented program for 18 weeks only. Mm-hmm. And then after 18 weeks, I got a commission as an ensign, which is the first stage as an officer in the Navy.
Okay. Do you think your training prepared you for Vietnam?
No.
No.
It did not. I never had combat training. After getting a commission, I became what they call EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal. That would be my specialty, and so that involved training for the Navy. EOD went through diving programs in Key West, Florida. So I had 8 weeks of diving training in Key West, Florida, and then I went to Explosive Ordnance Disposal School for I don't know how many months anyway, to learn how to render safe different explosives and things.
Can you describe an average day when you were stationed in Vietnam?
I guess an average day would be the way I operated, I had a team, what they call an EOD team. Mm-hmm. And there was myself, I was the officer of the team, and I had 3 enlisted men. And we were kind of on call all the time for if they saw where they needed divers, or if they suspected, or if they found some ammunition, or if they wanted to look for things. Sometimes they'd suspect something was planted, a mine was planted on the mm-hmm. ship. So we're always doing hull inspections of the ships and things like that. And then you'd get different calls, and sometimes it'd be nothing at all. You just hang out and not have any responsibilities at all. And other times you were doing some things that were, a little more exciting than that.
Yeah.
So.
What were some difficulties you had to overcome during your service over there? Obviously, avoiding.
I think the first thing, I never had any combat training. So when I got over there, the first thing when I was in a firefight at first, it was shocking how noisy it was. I mean, it was just, I had no training prepared for that. I think I'd gone to a rifle range or something, but I don't think I'd shot M16s and things like that. And so suddenly I was, you're in an amazing amount of noise, especially on these small boats when things happen. And
if you're going to San Francisco, be sure to wear some flowers in your hair.
As previously mentioned, the protest movement during the Vietnam War exploded. College campuses were alive with young voices vehemently protesting the war. The nation was ripped in half, with one side supporting the war and the other so radically against it that some protesters turned to self-emulation. By the end, most of the country had turned on the war completely.
To San Francisco.
How do you think your experience in the war has impacted your life, like as a whole, or do you think it has?
well, it made me much more skeptical of war, and I was definitely against going into Iraq.
Yeah.
And I went down and carried a sign and a thing before we went. So it was part of protests going into that. And I know, and I still feel that was something that we should not have been in. But so I guess I'm much more skeptical of war, and it's any glamorization of war is not something I like to see at all, because it's very, very ugly.
Well, speaking of protests, how did you feel about the protest movement that was going on back over here during the war?
I thought some of it was good, and you heard some good arguments and things like that. I thought a lot of it would get off, was too much against everything, against completely against any establishment, and so sometimes I thought they alienated many people, because you had, back then it was the hippies and things like that, and so you had these crazy hippies, and they were just sometimes being quite outrageous, and I thought that lost some of its effectiveness. And I think, if I'll digress a little here, just in the protest, I marched twice against Iraq, and in that protest march, you're standing next to somebody, and you're feeling this way, but somebody may be misbehaving next to you, and suddenly you feel like you're a part of that. The people that I was with in the protest march against Iraq had something about Palestine and Intifada, and they were chanting Intifada, Intifada. I'm thinking, come on, I'm here for, the whole protest was this. Another one, I was next to somebody. The next time I was next to somebody that was carrying a big vegan sign. What that had to do with the war in Iraq, I'm not sure, but so that's a problem with any kind of protest.
Yeah. How did you feel about the more radical protests that were taking place, like the people that were lighting themselves on fire and things like that were extreme?
Sad. But I think when you get the radical ones that are destructive, go out and smash bank windows or store windows, I think they're counterproductive, and I think they do a disservice to the, had I been, whatever violence was done in the Iraq march or protests, I think, that dilutes the protest to me.
Yeah. Have you heard the whole thing about how people think that the media lost the war for the U.S.?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. For which war were we talking about?
The Vietnam.
Oh. Yeah.
Would you agree with that?
No.
No.
No. I've heard Senator McCain, who ran for president, and he said, well, we didn't win Vietnam because we didn't have the will to win it. Well, I suppose we could have won it if we just bombed the country flat, civilians and everything. And maybe if you call that a win, that might have been a win. But that's, I didn't think. I'm not sure how you would win that war.